Good afternoon, everyone. Today, incredibly special program. John Casey, policy advisor to the White House and Congress, senior field engineer on the Space Shuttle program, consultant to NASA, CEO of the International Earthquake and Volcano Prediction Center. Today, we're going to discuss Upheaval, his new book, Why Catastrophic Earthquakes Will Soon Strike the U.S., as well his previous publication, Dark Winter with Newsmax. We're going to cover a lot of ground tonight, specifically what we see at the Oroville Dam and possible infrastructure wipeout, which would be the exact same thing if there was a catastrophic quake across the New Madrid fault zone. Without any further ado, John, welcome. It's been a year in coming, and a lot of my subscribers really have asked me to get together with you for an interview. And I appreciate you spending your time with me and informing our viewers of the changes that are coming. And so we have so many things in common, how we see the future unfolding with timelines and intensity. So from that, I'll let you go ahead and
thank you.
This is going to be a great conversation.
Well, you've done a wonderful job in communicating with so many people about what's really happening with the climate and that they need to be prepared to make a fairly significant adjustment in lifestyle and how they approach climate change and the future climate changes that are coming. So thank you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And for those of you who are just joining us, I buy coffee in Myanmar, and we started to experience crop losses back in 2012 and 2013. Now, this is Myanmar, tropical country, but you don't expect top leaf kill and bean density to be lost because of water molecules freezing inside the bean, and the porosity in there was completely off the charts. The quality of the bean was lowered. So I started to look at reasons why the crop losses were occurring for coffee specifically. And you know what? I came across John's work when he was presenting at a community center, trying to inform the people about no sea level rises. This was a couple of years ago. And since that point, he has been the #1 forecaster with the most correct forecasts about average sunspot number, beating NASA and the ESA, and so many other things as he sees the forecasts out. And when we go forward, with every grand solar minimum, there are large earthquakes that accompany every grand solar minimum. And this is the new premise of the book, what we can expect in the United States, where we can expect it, and what kind of infrastructure damage is going to occur. Now, what happens with our lives just in the crop losses associated with globally this mini ice age coming is an entirely different point. But John, could you please explain a little bit about your book? And in depth there was such a deep look at Cascadia, South Carolina, the New Madrid Fault, California.
I'll be glad to. Let me preface that by referring back to the original book, Dark Winter, originally Cold Sun, and then revised and updated as Dark Winter. In Dark Winter, we showed how there was a strong correlation between especially the cold phases of the sun, the cold climates produced by the sun, and our worst earthquakes and volcanoes. As a result of the research done to support the publication of Dark Winter, I later got together with a group of eminent geologists and seismologists around the world, and we produced a book. It took all of 2016, but this international team of scientists came up with the new book, which is Upheaval. Now, Upheaval was published mid-December of 2016. Is only now people becoming aware of it. So it's very important, and I do appreciate you bringing this out further. What we did in Upheaval was show that not only is there a strong correlation, but a very strong correlation between the solar minimums, or solar hibernations as I call them, and our worst earthquakes. As a result, going into significant detail and in-depth research, this team of scientists has shown fundamentally that we have just entered the most dangerous geophysical disaster period since our country's founding. This book goes into substantial analysis and finds very supportive evidence to show that In most cases, primary earthquake faults that everyone knows about throughout the U.S. are about to erupt with catastrophic quakes in the 7.0 to 8.0 range with an 80% probability or higher beginning this year and through 2038. So that's the major finding of all the research. But in upheaval, we go through every earthquake zone in the U.S. and analyze and predict what's coming.
Yeah, and have you come out and trying to predict major earthquakes even months in advance with your team? So what percentages are you getting to, and how do you feel that it's going with this, being able to predict within a month, two, or further out as to what's going to happen? And can you put an exact timeline on the mini ice age cooling and when you think these earthquake events will transpire?
Okay, a couple points then. First off, the book focuses on the large earthquake cycles that are coincident with the cold climate cycles. And that does not provide a specific year, month, and day of a quake coming. It does give you a broad window to examine, and this window, again, the International Earthquake and Volcano Prediction Center does. However, we do have multiple earthquake precursors that have allowed us to predict major earthquakes within months or weeks of their occurrence. That's a totally separate analysis from what we did in the book, but it's something we've been doing since 2012. In our first test program, we predicted 3 major earthquakes within a week or two, and this was done months before the quake ever occurred. So we were very pleased with our fundamental approach and our technology and the precursor signals we have selected that give us a fine-tuned countdown to a major quake. We've had 2 subsequent test programs. They've shown that even at a very basic level, we're well over 40% and approaching the 60 to 80% accuracy rate. It would be nice if we had funding to deploy the system to a major fault zone and begin active work. But even on the so-called back of the envelope analysis we're doing with our precursors, the International Earthquake and Volcano Prediction Center has shown very clearly that catastrophic earthquakes can be predicted with relatively fine accuracy.
Yeah, then when we take that into the parallels of what's happening with the Oroville Dam in California, if that is to overtop on the emergency spillway and run away at 5,800,000 cubic feet per second, the amount of infrastructure that will be damaged would be everything from gas pipelines to major highways, roads, electrical infrastructure, food deliveries, and the entire gamut of existence as we know it would be gone. You go into that in your book and you talk about the disruptions of our society and our lives within those states, specifically Missouri, Tennessee, Arkansas, etc., right up that New Madrid fault zone. So what kind of losses in infrastructure could we expect up the Mississippi Valley there?
Well, certainly the book Upheaval focuses on what we think is our biggest national earthquake threat, which is another rupture of the New Madrid fault zone, which is just, I guess most people could relate to it if I say it's between St. Louis and Memphis. That's generally where that New Madrid fault zone is. But even according to the government's estimates, if we have another repeat of the 1811-1812 series of catastrophic quakes, we're looking at between $300 and $600 billion in property damage. And of course, you're talking about the loss of tens of thousands of American lives. Furthermore, our opinion is that this is just only part of the damage that would come from another New Madrid rupture. What we found out in our analysis was that most of the volume of fuel and gas that goes from the Gulf states to feed the homes and businesses and power stations in the Northeast states go right through large pipelines that are in the middle of the New Madrid fault. According to government estimates, we're looking at 425,000 breaks in those pipelines. It would take months or years to repair them, during which the Northeast would be starved for fuel.
Yeah, and if we just even go back a month and a half or 2 months ago when they had a problem with a single pipeline, the panic that was taken through, the gas prices rose 20 to 30 cents a gallon within hours, and that was a single pipeline. Now, what will happen if the entire distribution system is ruptured or has difficulty delivering? Well, what will that do with prices? It'll create a black market. There'll be price gouging, and if you can get it, and then what are you prepared if it does not have click and go to ignite to cook your food? Do you have a backup plan? And also, do you have any suggestion for people to get ready for this in terms of backup plans and preparations?